Welcome to Breaking the Lines Pod. I'm Arland.
My name is Akeem, and this is a Premier League podcast.
All right, man. Match week 23, done and dusted. Akeem, how are you, man?
Yes, sir. I'm here, man. Another, I would say, a good match week. Some interesting things to go over this week, I would say. But yeah, a good, interesting match week to go into.
Yeah, very interesting. I think kind of everywhere, really. I mean, a lot of games, tight games, and some games not going in directions that we necessarily thought they would. I think if I remember correctly, I was looking back, I think you predicted 3 spot on in terms of the score, and I think I did too. We'll jump right into it. The first one was the West Ham Sunderland game, and both of us gave this to Sunderland, and West Ham, to our surprise,
Boy, we were so wrong.
came away with the 3-1 victory, man. I want to say I'm shocked, but it's the Prem, man.
Yeah, man. 3-0 in the first half, too, from a West Ham that we've given so much stick to over the past couple of weeks, you know.
Yeah.
It kind of gives us like the same Leeds kind of vibes, but hey, both of them are doing well at the moment. So, like we said, some good, interesting takes to go into this week because obviously them resurging in the last, 3 or 2 games, I think, up
Yeah.
some points. So, yeah, man, a good display. I watched the game. I was able, obviously, that was the first game on, and I watched it and I was surprised, bro. Just by how, like what we said about West Ham and to be 3-0 up as well in the first half. It didn't just happen, over the game. They were in total control. I think the first goal came in the 13 minutes. So yeah, it was surprising. It just makes it more interesting now going into the final stages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we discussed beforehand kind of, the changes that we expect to take place there and um, two victories back to back for West Ham's. Obviously beating Spurs last weekend and then Sunderland this weekend. I think maybe obviously both impressive considering their season, but maybe this one being a little bit more impressive considering how good Sunderland has been this year. But I think they needed them. They needed the last, obviously the Spurs game, and they needed this game as well, especially because Forrest won too, unpredictably as well. So I mean, we'll talk about that one, but I think they needed that to stay pace, and sure enough, they got it.
Yeah, they definitely did. And like we said, I mean, we were kind of rooting for what? Wolves to kind of catch up a couple weeks back. So for them to kind of just, creep away from them and Burnley there at the bottom, like we said, it just makes it interesting in these final stages because I don't know, like we're recording this a little bit later than we did. So we're able to hear or to discuss a little bit about the rumors of Strad Lawson possibly going to West Ham as well. So sorry, Axel Disasi, the Chelsea player, is also, I guess, in talks with them. So they could be in for a late, like we said, end of season push to get out of that relegation zone, and then it could kind of just make things a lot more interesting, like we've said.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. Definitely a couple things to keep our eyes on. And then outgoings too. I mean, I think Paquetá is all but finished too. Him going back to Brazil. So I think that will be kind of, I want to say, a big loss for them. And it's interesting to see. I think last year he was linked with City, and everyone was kind of obviously rumors. We don't know how accurate they were, but the rumors were stating that they were valuing him at like the 100 million mark, and then to see him kind of go to Brazil for, less than half of that is interesting. But we'll see kind of how those teams shape up, especially down there, what they bring in. I think you and I both have kind of, given Strand Larson, some stick and also some props. It'll be interesting to see how he fares at West Ham and how that curse of the West Ham striker, if he can bypass.
And it's at this time we got to put that thing as a Premier League striker, bro, because every club that gets a new striker struggles, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Premier League, I think it's a Premier League thing, man. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Like obviously, like most players, we try to keep it honest. Some they'll get the stakes and they'll get when they do well, we will give it based on our opinion that they did well. I had Strad. I think everybody had Strad Lawson last season in his in their fantasy. So we obviously know what he can do. But like you said, just like with Paqueta, right? I think his head was turned earlier in the season as well. with the Newcastle link because before Baltimore, I think it was him to Newcastle, and they kind of wanted a fee that I think Newcastle wasn't going to pay. So yeah, I think it's just, especially at those clubs that we would kind of, I wouldn't say a lesser club, but they're not necessarily challenging for anything in the league. It's always a little bit, tricky when a bigger club, as we would say, or a more established club try to approach their players. So kind of have to give them some grace with that. But the same time, like, they're kind of used to it in terms of selling players, Declan Rice, all those kind of players that we can mention. And let's hope that they reinvest and it can be something good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of go back to the strikers in the Prem, I was gonna say, don't ask Anthony Gordon why that is, but we can move on. We can move on into the
Hey, listen, it's the right message, wrong messenger. That's the best reply I've seen to it. It's the right message, just the wrong messenger.
absolutely. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to the Burnley Spurs game, and we both predicted draw. I predicted this one correct all the way with the score and everything to the 2-2. And Burnley pick up another point, and Spurs struggles continue.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that their center backs had to come and save them. They're about to lose the game as well, and 2 goals from their center back. So, like you said, man, we kind of predicted it. We kind of talked about it last week with them, the attacking players going forward for them and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't think it's anything surprising to us. Obviously, it happened. There's a lot of reaction from the Tottenham fan base and how they feel and stuff like that. And it's been like that for a while, but from what we've seen, I don't think it's anything surprising to either of us, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, you mentioned the center backs because I'm just looking at their top scorers this season, and only one player has more goals than Christian Romero and Mickey Van de Ven, and that's Richarlison with 7. So each of Romero and Van de Ven have 4 goals. Arguably, probably their 2 best players. And I think it's time and time again. You kind of look at that score. Like you said, we're recording this a little bit later than usual, so we kind of already know what the Champions League is said and done. So to see the difference, between that team and in the Champions League and the Premier League is Spurs' run in the Champions League hasn't been as difficult, but I mean, still, like, Burnley's a relegation team, and you're drawing to them. So it is what it is, and then I'm interested to see how they play this upcoming weekend against City, especially, we'll talk about both, that and City's performance in a little bit here, but I think it'll be a good test for us to kind of gauge, how this Spurs team is headed. I know we can, you can argue that the previous run of results really is, all you need.
I was gonna
Um,
say, I already gauge what I need to gauge, brother.
but we'll see, man. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Disappointing result, I think, for Spurs, but good point for Burnley.
Yeah, man, definitely. Like we said, anytime Burnley can pick up a point, it's always good. But like we said, just worrying for Spurs. My biggest takeaway goes back to my point that I made earlier. They almost lost the game. They were losing 2-1 the second half. I know it was a scruffy goal that they conceded, but not not doing well defensively and not creating anything going forward. That's always kind of like a remedy for, trouble. Yeah, it's like you said, it will be interesting. For me, it won't be as interesting because even if they do go and win the City game, it won't say much to me. You know what I mean? In terms of, and I'm being a neutral from the outside. Because, you like you said, your bread and butter games that you have to win, those matters as well. Probably for them a little bit more important than this City game at the moment. Not necessarily that 3 points is not 3 points, but you need to be picking up as much 3 points as you can. And if you're going to do those one-off performance, then for a big club like Tottenham, I think that's a little bit worrying. So we'll
Yeah.
see how the game goes this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we can move on to Craven Cottage and Fulham beat Brighton 2-1 at home, obviously, and this was one of the ones that you predicted spot on. I actually had it going
Or
2-1 the other way. This was an interesting game too. I didn't watch this game, but I was kind of keeping tabs on it, and I remember seeing Brighton up 1-0 at half, and I remember thinking to myself, my Fulham's struggles are just kind of continuing. And sure enough, they come back in the second half and they get 2 goals and then another goal by Harry Wilson. What a free kick this was. And yeah, they come away with the 3 points.
yeah, I think like Harry Wilson, I saw something on Twitter talking about him, and I mean, he's the epitome of like a confidence player, from his journey of what he's been through, and even just this season, because like you can talk about the previous before, but the past like 5 or 6 games, he was kind of the same, like non-existent as well. And kind of got, but every player is like that. I'm not gonna just kind of single him up. I think every player plays on confidence, but I think him being so influential to that Fulham team, it shows, you know what I mean, in terms of them picking up points in the past couple of weeks. So like you said, what a free kick. For me, I know I predicted 2-1 last week when we had the pod, but like always, we always record the pod before the FPL final. So sometimes I'll do my prediction before making my team. So while watching this, I was actually rooting for Brighton being one up because I had Verbruggen in my goal for my fantasy, and then lucky enough they conceded 2 goals and kind of dropped my points. So, but yeah, I think it was a good performance from Fulham. Like we said, it's kind of a great goal as well. That first goal from Brighton, what a strike! I think some good goals in the game. The free kick, like you said, in that first goal, and it looked like Brighton had everything under control until Fulham kind of just, I think tweaked a little bit in the second half and went there and got the deserved win in the end there with that free kick. So yeah, I think it was a good performance. They've been pulling out those along with that free kick against not free kick with that stunner against Liverpool. They've been pulling out those late goals lately. So like we said, definitely a team on confidence and in form at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see, how they fare in the next, this upcoming match week with, I think, they're playing United, if I'm not mistaken, away to Old Trafford, so I think that will be interesting to see 2 teams that have kind of, been performing well lately. But that takes us into the City Wolves game, and we both predicted 2-0, so this is one that, we both obviously got spot on. City come away with the 2-0 victory, and I did watch I watched a bit of the first half and then a bit of the end of the game on this one. Obviously, City win 2-0 and it was, you know, I don't wanna say comfortable, but I wanna say comfortable. I don't know if you know what I mean, but there were times where Wolves kind of stepped out and tried to go at City more towards the end, to be honest, but still not an entirely convincing performance by City, and I think you and I kind of in the predictions were discussing this that, we're predicting them to win, but you never know, right? Especially in this, season of the Prem.
Yeah, you kind of never know. And we've talked about it a little bit in terms of like just the big teams and the teams in and around those areas. Kind of what we said about Spurs having those kind of, I mean, better than Spurs, but kind of having those moments of where they look okay, and then also those moments where they look vulnerable. So, like we said, for City, a decent win, a clean sheet. Anyone would take that, but like we said, just not as convincing as the old City as we know. So, but I'm sure they'll take the 2-0 and go. It was a great cross from for the Marmoush first goal there. I think so. Especially when you have Holland and what he would consider probably one penalty in like last 7 or whatever the cases might be, in a little bit of a drought in his standard. When you're getting the other players involved, I'm sure they're happy. So let's see. They just signed, like we said, we're recording. I mean, the deal went through a long time ago, but they just added an experience, probably the outside the best out of the big clubs, other defender in the Premier League, and an attacker that's also one of the other best attackers outside of the big club in the Premier League to their team. So that should strengthen them, like we said, in the final stretch here. It will be interesting to see what they do and what also happens between them and Arsenal because they also have to play Arsenal again. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that game I think is at City too. So, will be interesting to see. Um, Possibly seeing each other in the Champions League too down the line. Obviously, still a ways to go there, but I think that they're predicted in the same kind of path, possibly. Interesting to see all around. Like you said, yeah, they definitely have strengthened, and I think that only makes them better, right? But good 3 points for them, especially given that Arsenal dropped points on Sunday. But moving on, next game we have is the Bournemouth Liverpool game, and I was very close to this one. I predicted 2-2. You predicted Bournemouth to win, so I mean you got the result, but the game was 2-2. I remember I was looking at the score on my phone. I was kind of stuck at a crossroad because I was like, I predicted 2-2, so this will be good for my predictions. And then Liverpool scored, and I was like, I was kind of upset about the prediction, but I was still kind of happy that Liverpool lost. So, it was kind of like a win-win for me.
Yeah, I mean, as you know from the outside, I mean, for me, I don't even hate watch too much anymore like that with them. But it's always good, especially for us as the kind of rival fans when our rival lose. I'm not gonna act like I'm not happy. Especially considering Liverpool and I are fighting pretty much for the top four spot there. So yeah, for us seeing the game as well, it was an interesting game. Some defenses there from. I mean, they've been kind of doing that all season, right? So we can't even pick out like necessarily like it's just whether it's kind of Kirkez and Van Dijk there on the first goal, just making some sloppy defensive errors that led them to being 2-0 down, and then Van Dijk himself helping him starting to get back into the game with that great header. And then, like you said, the beauty of the Premier League at the moment with the long throws kind of get them undone at the end there. And it was, like you said, I'm sure Bournemouth were happy, especially after just losing Semenyo as well to pick up the 3 points. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, and then I don't know if it was a defensive error on the first goal or the ball just got caught in the wind, but definitely a interesting game and an exciting game, and it was I watched bits and pieces of this game kinda tapered off towards the end, but it was exciting. It was interesting to see the comments after the game, especially about that first goal and then the wind and all of that, but I think, it's interesting with Van Dijk. I mean, I think we said this earlier on in the season. I think before anyone really started questioning him, I think a lot of I don't know if it's just the Liverpool fan base or but they had this great sort of pride in Van Dijk and they refused to kind of blame him for anything, so I think that we've seen that kind of change now as the season's gone on. People are trying to hold him accountable for more stuff, and I'm not saying that he's the only one at fault for that whole or for the Liverpool season, but definitely some mistakes in that defense this year for sure.
yeah, most definitely, like you said, football will always, football along with life will always kind of give us our ups and downs, and as some people will say, will definitely humble you. And yeah, he's in my opinion a top player. I'm not going to go beyond that and all of that, but from the outsider, I've always also rated him very highly. I think the discouragement or this difference comes in with the Liverpool fans, I would say, when, like you said before, this season is where he was kind of like unbelievable. So it's kind of for us as the neutral from the outside, I wouldn't say I've rated him highly, so I'm not gonna say good, but it's also, I would say, I guess good to kind of see that him going through this period and Liverpool fans are admitting it for what it is because as much as how we've always rated him, we've also seen some really good players come through our club. So we kind of understand it, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that Liverpool don't. They're not used to good players coming through, but just to the levels that he was kind of put to and the pedestal that he was kind of on, it's always kind of like, I guess it was deserving for him to kind of along with the team, like you said, because it's not just him to get their stat a little down this year, especially after winning the Prem last season and on that high. So yeah, it's interesting to see for me. I still rate him highly, but at the same point, it's still good to kind of just to see because of the category of him playing. I would say not as much as some of the players that he was being compared to. You know what I mean? Like he was a great center back, and I would definitely in this modern day and age put him in my all 11 for sure. But when we come to think about some of the players that we've been through, or that's been through the Prem, I think it's kind of disrespectful. Some of the conversations, or how the conversations were going 2 or 3 seasons ago when he was peak.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and I think that a lot of fans or not a lot of non-Liverpool fans, I think, kind of felt that way too, and it's not to say anything I mean, like, I agree with you, I think in his kinda generation, I think he's probably the best center back in his generation by far, right? But at the same time, it's like you're saying, you kind of have to, like, take a lot into account, but, I digress. We'll see kind of how I'm interested to see one thing I'm interested to see about Liverpool is how they go into next season, especially with that back line. I don't necessarily think that I mean, I personally believe that it's time for them to kind of reshape that back line moving forward. I don't believe that they will, and I think that a lot of people might think I'm a little bit premature in that kind of thinking, but,
I think
I
you are. They definitely have to, bro. I promise you. I think you are, and I know what you mean, but in terms of they have to. I think from this season with Konate to Van Dijk, they have to reshape. They might keep Kirkez, obviously he's new and they spent a lot and ping pong, they're hoping that he gets over his injury prone and stuff. I'm not saying that Van Dijk and Konate is just gonna be dumb, but I think they're gonna revamp and bring something they have to bring something new in the summer,
yeah.
a young name or something of that sort to kind of to going into next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see. I mean, still a ways away from that. We'll see kind of how they end the season and if they do end up getting Champions League ball next season. So interesting to see. But that kind of wrapped it up for Saturday's games. We move into Sunday, and first one we have up is the Brentford Forest game, and this was another game that absolutely stumped us. I mean, we both gave it to Brentford in the
Bro.
predictions,
Oh
and
my God.
yeah, Forest come away with the 2-0 victory.
Bro, I had Thiago as my captain. So watching this game, I'm like, man, out of every game, bro, you could have done something, you done nothing. But I mean, a deserved victory for Forest. It was kind of one of those, as much as the praises we give Brentford this season, it was one of their first performance that I've seen that they kind of looked just out of it. And like I said, Thiago was my captain, and M1, along with everybody else on that team, didn't do anything on that day. So it was kind
And
of deserved for Forest, and yeah, the table is like we said with West Ham earlier. It's just so tricky because everyone's so close, and then you have some of these teams that a couple weeks they might not look on it, and then a couple weeks later they're on a winning run or they're winning games comfortably. So
yeah.
it's interesting.
Very interesting because I mean, if Forest would have lost this game with West Ham winning, they would have been 2 points in front of West Ham. So I mean, it would have been a lot more nervy in that Forest team. But it's interesting to see Sunderland and Brentford, two teams that we kind of like given as like a sleeper team or a team we didn't necessarily expect to be as good as they are this season to be losing in the same match week. I just think that that's kind of there's no context there, but just interesting to see that they both drop points on the same match week. Ultimately, I think good victory for Forest. I don't think it's the end of the world for Brentford. I mean, they've had a good season so far. They're right in and around. I mean, I don't think that they would have expected to be where they are in the table, but like we said, it's very tight up there. So one victory or one loss can kind of bring you down quite a bit. So not a bad, not a horrible result for them, but I think much needed 3 points for Forest overall.
Yeah, I think they'll take it and move and go
Yeah.
on for sure.
Yep. All right. Next up, we have the Palace Chelsea game, and Chelsea winning 3-1. We both gave it to Chelsea. I think I had 2-0 and you had 2-1. I think I watched the first half in this game, if I'm not mistaken. And the first half was kind of I'd say it was like almost even. And then, in my opinion, at least, and then Esteval had a good run down the middle, and showed good pace, good strength, and finished. So it was a good goal from him. Very impressed by that. I did think watching this, I remember, I think Caicedo got a yellow card in the 20th, and I don't remember how much later it was, but it wasn't too much later. I thought he got a little bit fortunate to not get a second yellow. He made a silly foul, and it it wasn't like a soft foul, but I think it was like a tug or something, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was thinking to myself, I was like, "Ooh," I was like, "He might get sent off here." But escaped that, and then, Chelsea kind of just finished the game off in the second half. Eventually, I think, there was a red in this game, yeah. Adam Morton got a red card in the second half, and funny enough, Palace scored with 10 men, so kind of a funny game overall. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, like you said, not really much in there to separate us in the first half, I think, as well. Nothing different than I expected, to be honest with you. Kind of to touch back on our guy Anthony Gordon and his statement earlier, we kind of know how tight these Premier League matches are. So, like you said, the first goal kind of is very crucial. I think it's very important in these Premier League games. So, also watching it like it came from a Crystal Palace mistake with a back pass that ended up at Esteval's feet with all of their players pushing forward. So yeah, like you said, nothing to separate us, but with us getting that one goal there, was able to kind of open things up. Joao Pedro was able to extend it in the second half early there, and then with the penalty, we kind of knew that we had won the game pretty much with 3-0 there, and like you said, with the red card coming right after as well, it was kind of a bit more control. Palace looked a little bit more resurgent. I think they could take credit from that in terms of, or take credit in that in terms of they did look a lot better. I mean, they had nothing to lose in that sense, so they were pushing forward with 10 men and got the goal that I felt we could have probably defended a bit better. But at the same time, it's very scrappy in the Prem, how it is. So yeah, I'll take the 3-1 and we kind of move. Little changes obviously from Maresca to the new coach that we have at the moment. And I don't know if it's going to be good in the long run, or I don't know if it's going to be bad. Like I'm just kind of watching to see, but it's interesting to see that we're at least, I would say, creating more clear-cut chances, if that makes sense in terms of like, but it's only been a couple games, so I'm not gonna, kind of get over my head. But I would say from that Crystal Palace game, it would kind of be the similar theme, but maybe, us dominating and kind of losing the ball in transition and going behind. That goal came from us actually defending really deep, and allowing them to come onto us and giving us the space in behind. So those are some of the things noticing, like I said. So it'll be interesting to see how we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good 3 points for Chelsea, right? I mean, given the context of Liverpool losing, I know obviously United won. I think it's a good 3 points. When your rivals and the team in and around you drop points and you're picking up points. Like I said, we both predicted Chelsea to win. I was for sure I could have put my house on this. I had that feeling that obviously we mentioned Palace's struggles as of late and everything, and then I just figured
Ain't
Chelsea.
none of these team in the Premier League worth you putting your house on. I'll tell you that right now. You saved the house, my brother.
But yeah, good 3 points, right? And we'll see. Chelsea have West Ham this weekend, so it'll be interesting. We'll go over it in the predictions, but good 3 points overall. Palace struggling, and their struggles I think are going to continue. So we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, especially with a couple of their players wanting to leave, like you said, it just makes it interesting now. We just talked about Dewey moving to Man City. Also, Mateta, we hearing that might be leaving in the end of the transfer window here. So, like you said, it will be interesting because the last couple games have been.
Yeah. Well, that moves us to the Newcastle Villa game, and we went two different ways on this. I went the victory for Newcastle, and you went for Villa, and Villa come away with a 2-0 victory away to Newcastle, which is, I'd say, sort of impressive. Newcastle is not the easiest place to go to, and they went there and they got a goal in each half. Buendia and Watkins on the score sheet. They win 2-0, and they're kind of keeping pace with City and gain some ground on Arsenal.
When I asked the question, I'm like, mate, is Villa getting serious? Because I watched this game, and yeah, they were kind of in control. I wouldn't say kind of, but completely deserved the win. I was watching from a ultimate point standpoint to kind of get some, points in my fantasy. But yeah, like you said, it's just I am actually surprised. I'm not surprised that Villa won, but it's just in the manner of how they won and with the context of where they are and stuff that I know last week I kind of touched on it on the pod and said I don't think that they're going to win the Prem. I still don't think that they're going to win the Prem, but I think, just keeping pace with this is kind of impressive because as we know, Newcastle is also not the easiest place to go win. So keeping a clean sheet as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say that keeping a clean sheet too. 2-0 victory on paper looks comfortable, and we'll see. I mean, it's gonna be interesting for them. I'm very interested to see where they finish in the table because a couple weeks ago, I thought that they would have dropped off a little bit, and they still might, but I thought they might have dropped off a little bit, and I figured that they'd finish in and around that maybe 4th, 5th place, depending on, those other teams, but they're keeping pace, like I said, and I think it's up to those other teams to kind of try and catch up to them. They host Brentford next, so that'll be an interesting game to see how Brentford bounce back and if Villa can see them off as well. But very, very interesting result. And a very good result for Villa.
yes, sir, just keeping pace with those teams in and around them and kind of seeing what happens. So good for
Yeah,
them. I'm sure they'll take it and they move. I, like you, think that they would, thought that they would taper off and still think that they will taper off. But as they keep winning, like I said, and I just mentioned it, I just got to keep that kind of little eye on them over there because you never know.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us into the last game of that Sunday, and at the Emirates, Arsenal United beating Arsenal 3-2. I know you and I discussed a little bit kind of over text and whatnot after the game, but it was a frustrating game for me. If I was watching this game on my own TV, I don't know if my TV would have made it at the end there, but having some time to kind of reflect and look back on it, I I would say I think United deserved the victory by how they handled Arsenal. Some people might not agree with me on that, but I didn't like the way that Arsenal played the game, especially after they got the equalizer late in the second half and made it 2-2. It almost felt like there was a bit of an experience or a lack of experience there where, you're losing this game, you just tied it up, you're getting a point from it, but they had this feeling of they absolutely needed to get the 3 points, and they're all guns blazing in the last few minutes, and sure enough, United get the ball, and midfielders are out of position, and Cunha has some space to run into, and honestly could have kept going and had a little bit more space, but he hit a shot, and it happened to be a great shot and went in. So I was very upset by that. That kind of set me over the edge, just because I was like, if you can't win it, don't lose it. And they just allowed themselves to get back into the game with that equalizer. But throughout the whole game, I mean, in the first half, I thought we started well, actually. We went up 1-0 on what was deemed an own goal, but I thought that we started very well. I mean, up until when we scored, I don't think United had anything. I mean, there was nothing. And then we kind of gifted them a goal. Obviously, Zubamendi with the back pass, and um, you know, free shot on goal. So, what are you gonna do, right? United equalized, and I think that kind of gave them the confidence because it was just before halftime. So, you're going into halftime, you're tied, 1-1. I think that kind of gave them some confidence and some boost. And then obviously, they get the Patrick Dorgu goal, which, was a brilliant strike, and just kind of made it hard for Arsenal after that. Sat back and defended, and surprising a Manchester United team, defended decently well. Obviously, got undone by a set piece with Arsenal's equalizer, but had the resilience to come back and get the winner late on.
Yeah, for me watching this, bro, honestly, I know for you, and I get the frustration for sure. There's just one thing, I mean, I'm in and around in terms of like watching the game, I was kind of going for United, to be fair. And for me, like just watching the game and seeing everything that happened, it kind of just gave me like the one thing that Jose Mourinho had said, like that football heritage thing, because I've also watched the first game, Old Trafford, and I felt United played well in that game and deserved something from that game. They didn't get anything to say lost. So I think it was just kind of come around. But to watch the game, go back to what I said last week, there's the two things that came to mind was what I said in terms of the heritage and how just like I said from the first game, how I kind of felt United had deserved something. So, it was good to kind of see them to come back and redeem themselves, especially getting the win. But also the second point that I made was like I know I said to you last week because I was telling my brother-in-law, I was like, I told my friend, I have not seen, and I'm glad the way you summarize it, because like I said to you, I haven't seen a worrying performance from Arsenal, but I think I have now. You know what I mean? That was my first one. Like I said, I know we spoke last week. That was the first one where I watched, and like you summarized it, I watched it as well, and I just felt like United deserved the win. Like there's no way I could have argued for Arsenal or anything, and I have no interest into the game. I'm just trying to be like as neutral as possible because whatever team lose, obviously, I know the fan base and stuff. So, yeah, for me, it just felt in that sense of like it was the first worrying performance from Arsenal. They're still 4 points ahead. When you look in the context and everything, everything is still in their hand. They had a wonderful, unbeaten Champions League run. Everything else is still going good for them. For me, the only thing now, it's like the nerves of them being in this position before and it happening, and also, like I said, that was the first worrying performance that I have seen, but then also like, preparing for the pod and not even just preparing for the pod, but just seeing Arsenal stuff and being so in tune with Arsenal because I watch a lot of Arsenal content. The fans also talking about the last three games. So when you get to summarize the fact that they've kind of picked up, I forgot how many, but I don't think you won any in the last three. And when you could have kind of extended the lead. So yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. I still think that they're by far the best team in the country and they should win the league. Like you said, I think the performance itself for me, I've been watched them. I think I would say I watch them a lot this season. From a neutral point of view, from also, like we said, just watching the league, I think they're the best team. So I watch them and Man City a lot. So yeah, I would say out of all the games that I've seen, and I've seen a lot, that's my first worrying game. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do going forward to fix those because I on that day think United definitely deserved the victory. And like you said, this is a team that completely dismantled a Bayern Munich team. They're unbeaten in the Champions League, and some of those teams are kind of flawless, as not flawless, but they're I would say a lot better than the United team that we're currently watching. So I mean, it's football; anyone can win in 90 minutes, so it's not going to be something too big. But I think it's just the first worrying sign that I've seen from the neutral point. So I kind of just want to see how they handle it going forward now.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think I said this to I forget who I was talking to, but I said that to them that this game and this performance, I think, makes the Leeds game the most important game for Arsenal thus far in the Premier League because you're away to Leeds. I think we thrashed them like 5-1 at the Emirates or something, or 5-0 or so, whatever it was, right? But I think the fact that, I know you don't consider Villa to be in that title race, but I think the fact that Villa and City now are only 4 points behind, and you've dropped points in 3 of your last games. You haven't had a victory. This was the first time Arsenal scored they didn't score the last 2 games. So I think the fact that you lost this game at home to a United team that has not been great this year, for me, I think the way you bounce back will dictate kind of that confidence and the morale around the team inside the club and outside the club too. Because I think if Arsenal go on and don't win the Leeds game, I think it's just like it just becomes even more of like a black hole that you sink yourself into in terms of like, oh, you're gonna bottle it again, right? So I think the Leeds game is probably the most important game in the Prem thus far, for me at least, that Arsenal have played, just because of the way that this game went, the result, and everything else around them in the league.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's all about how it's still in their hands right now, so it's up to them on how they deal with it. My takeaway, and like I said, I agree with you, and in terms of, I'm sure you're just agreeing as well, is they've been here before, so let's see now. They by far, I still think have the best team, and we also have to remember putting it in context. I know we're doing this and we're reacting, but like we said, City has shown us a lot of those inconsistent performances so far this season. I'm sure that will come again from them. And for Villa, we have to give them their credit. That's why I was saying, got to kind of just keep an eye on them as well because, they're just kind of doing their job silently and just going about the business. So, yeah, I think it would be interesting now with the leads and just everything going forward, like if Man City don't drop points, because even if they beat Leeds and then they don't, win the next game and Man City necessarily win their next 2, then, that's going to create a problem. Like we said, still having to go to the Etihad. So yeah, it just makes it wouldn't be, I watched someone this week and I think they summarize it the best in terms of Arsenal could be their biggest downfall. Arsenal's biggest, threat to this Premier League title in terms of like what we just talked about, the mental strength and stuff. So it just will be interesting on that point because like we know they have everything else to win the league. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of concluded the weekend. The last game of the week was the 1-1 draw at Everton between Everton and Leeds. This was one that you and I both predicted spot on, and I think if I remember correctly in the predictions, I said I have no idea what to do, so I'm just gonna go 1-1, and it ended up being 1-1. I think, obviously Barry got another goal. I think he scored against Villa too when they beat Villa, so that was interesting to see him get on the score sheet. I was thinking maybe of bringing him possibly into the fantasy, but 2 goals back to back, I bring him into fantasy. I already know he's gonna blank, so I might save Everton and their fans some trouble and not bring him in. I don't know.
It was a game of the same goals. I don't know if you're able to see them, but they scored the same goal. Barry was near post and the other one was far post, but it was same like similar goal. Slow
Uh-huh.
cross on the ground. Barry was near post second half to get the equalizer. Theirs was first. I mean, they had a little mix up, but very similar goal. Like besides that, nothing else really in the game, to be honest. We kind of in the prediction kind of said it. We just didn't know because both teams could be so conservative at times. And both of them wanting to pick up points, especially with the part of the season that we're at. It was only set up for, I guess, for the 1-1.
Yeah,
Could have been a
and
0-0. It's better than a 0-0.
yeah, 100%. And I think, and given the context of the league, I think, a good point for Leeds and a vital point for Leeds because, the teams below them all won. So, if you don't pick up a point and they win, I know there's still some distance there, but, to get a point when West Ham and Forrest below you win, and then obviously Burnley got a point too. So I think it's a good point for Leeds overall.
For sure. Like I said, you can't win it, don't lose it for them. And they've been on a decent run since December. So for them, it's just, you're not going to get 3 points every week. But if you're not losing, you're also picking up some points. So good for them to kind of just keep themselves, especially with what's going on with West Ham and Forest picking up 3 points. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that kind of rounds off match week 23. some changes in the top four. Liverpool obviously bouncing out, and Chelsea and United kind of leapfrogging them. Brentford moved down, and Fulham move in front of them, and then the rest of it kind of feels like it's flip-flopping here and there, but staying the same at the same times. Interesting league table. I'm sure it's going to change again after this next match week. You ready for the predictions?
Yes, sir. That's why we here, man.
All right, let's do it. First up, we have Brighton, Everton. Saturday game, what are you thinking?
I'm going 2-0 Brighton because they have to return back after that weekend performance last week.
I like that. And I honestly don't know. I didn't know which way to give it, but I felt Brighton at home. They've had a couple disappointing weeks. I'm gonna give it 2-1 to Brighton. Next up, Leeds Arsenal. What are you thinking?
Interesting. I think Lee's gonna make this difficult for Arsenal. I'm going 1-1.
All right. I think it will be difficult as well. I'm going 2-1. I think Arsenal have to win. Have to win. Wolves, Bournemouth.
Let's go. I'm gonna actually go for an upset here. I'm going 2-1 Wolves.
Okay. I was actually looking at this one earlier, and my first instinct was to give it to Bournemouth, but then I was kind of hesitant. But I think I'm gonna go with my gut first instinct and go. I'm gonna go Bournemouth 2-1. Chelsea, West Ham. How are you feeling on this one?
I'm gonna go 3-1 Chelsea. Hopefully
Okay.
we get a clean sheet. I should say 3-0. I'll go 3-0. I'll change it to
3-0. Okay. I like that. I'm gonna go 3-0 too. I don't think West Ham will give any issues to Chelsea at all whatsoever.
3. Yeah, bro. We should have somebody editing these clips because then next week it's just wow 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 West Ham. Yo, it's too funny. But yeah, man. Hopefully we get the victory. Brings us in. Oh, a good game coming. I know Liverpool plays Newcastle this weekend.
Ye Yeah, very, very good game and a tough game to predict. For some reason, I wanna say Liverpool win this, but I think any other time I would've said, I would possibly have seen a draw, but I think Liverpool will win the game 2-1.
I'm gonna go for a 2-2.
Alright. That's what I was going to go, but I don't know. I was like, maybe Liverpool will just come away with the victory. Villa Brentford, another interesting game. I think Villa win. I'm gonna go 1-0.
I'm actually gonna go the other side. I'll go 1-0 Brentford.
I like that. United Fulham, interesting game. Both teams been playing decently lately. I think this will be kind of a test of. I know, since Ruben Amorim left, they beat City, they beat Arsenal, but United always had it in them, even under Ruben Amorim, to play decent in big games.
Yeah.
I think what they've struggled with the most is the smaller games. So, and not to no disrespect to Fulham, but I think this would be one of the games that they would have struggled under Amorim. So I think it'd be interesting to see kind of how they play this game out. But I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm gonna go 3-1 United.
Okay. I'm going for Old Trafford, Mr. Wilson. I'm gonna go 1-1. I was gonna give it to United, but let me go 1-1. I'm thinking about Fulham's unconfident at the moment. I know United has won. I agree with you. I think you're more up for those bigger games than you are for these games, and that's been the Achilles heel of United.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a good game. It'll be a good watch for sure. Next up, Forest Palace, another sort of weird game to predict. Any gut feelings on this one?
I'm going for a Palace win because they have to. I'll say 2-0.
All right, I'm gonna go 2-1 the other way. I'm gonna go 2-1 Forest. I just feel like Palace has been struggling. They're gonna continue to struggle. Next up, the big game of the match week. Or used to be big game if you don't rate Tottenham anymore after their how many games did they lose last season?
22 was it?
That 22. There we go. And if they lose this, it'll be their 10th of this campaign. So interesting game. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this one's kind of. I'm more scratching my head picking this one because, like you said, it could be a Spurs that show up for the day, and it also could be a Man City that's just underwhelming or a Man City that just blows. It's difficult. So I'm gonna go. I don't know. I'm kind of struggling on this one, honestly. I have my answers for everybody else, but I'm gonna give it to City. I don't know how much. I'll go 3-1. I'd say 3-1 City.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult one. Like, to be honest, I think any result could happen here. And, you could say, yeah, I could see that happening.
That's true.
I think because of Spurs' struggles, I think I have to give it to City too. But I could see it being a draw, depending on, like you said, what Spurs team shows up. But I'm gonna give it 2-1 City. And the last game of the match week, Sunderland Burnley, Sunderland home. I feel like Sunderland will probably bounce back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so as well. But then I'm thinking these are the teams that just came up from the championship, so those games are always going to be a bit different, because they know each other more. I'm going to give this one a close one. Sunderland just edging it. I would say 2-1 Sunderland.
Okay. I think Sunderland will edge it too, but I'm gonna go 1-0 just for the sake of not copying you. And that kind of concludes the match week predictions. Some interesting I think we have some interesting predictions just kind of looking back at them. I'm excited to see what happens, man. I think it's good games all around, Saturday and Sunday. Um the Monday game, the Sunderland Burnley game too. I think that's gonna be a good game. Maybe not the best watch, but I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Any closing remarks from you on your end?
No, sir. Just excited for the games. Hopefully, we can pick up some more points and keep going. Like we said, the table is tricky. It'd be interesting to see what the Liverpool result, obviously the Villa, how they keep going, Man City with the big game, and then, like you said, how Arsenal respond. I think it's a lot of, we go into this match week with a lot of questions that will be answered. So let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I'm excited too, man. We'll see how it goes. Excited to review them next week. But that is it for Match Week 23 Pod.
Sir, thanks for joining us as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.